I want to talk a little bit about the fight around our food systems and farming. So I think I'm in a room, and I got to have a chance to hear Bonnie's talk. I know that these issues around food and food systems and farming probably resonate with all of you. And there may be a variety of reasons why you're interested in this topic. You may be upset by the fact that a lot of our food comes from feedlots today, uses too much corn, too much water, bad for the environment, caged laying hens, inhumane to animals, a whole variety of issues around the way we farm today. Some of you may know that we're losing topsoil at a rate much faster than we could ever replace. You may be concerned about the giant subsidies that we're paying on corn and ethanol and wheat and things that have really changed the balance of our diet. You might be interested or concerned about fast food, what it's doing to people's diets today, the growing epidemic of childhood diabetes, of obesity in our country, the fact that school lunch programs aren't the healthy meals that we wanted to have. Or perhaps you're interested in the topic because you just love the idea of buying your food at a farmer's market. You like to look the farmer in the eye and say, so tell me exactly what went into my food. How did you grow it? Or you want to support the farmers and the growers in our local community. You might be interested in school programs. We have a lot of great things that are actually going on here in Maine. This is a shot from southern Maine. And I've seen what happens when kids in their local communities get a chance to see how their food is grown and the opportunities of sitting down with a young kid who's actually been out in the garden and believes that every carrot they ever see is one that they grew, or the kale that's now being served in their cafeteria that came from a local farm is something that tastes good to them now. This is a Longfellow Elementary School, and seeing kindergartners swarm a salad bar is an important reason to care about food, because it shows us that some of our myths about kids, that they only want to eat chicken McNuggets, isn't true if you give them great choices. Now, I'm passionate about this fight because I think we should have more farmers in Maine and more local farms, and that's sort of part of my heritage and my own background. I'm actually, just in case you didn't know, I'm not from Maine. I was born in Minnesota. So this is my family farm. They were Scandinavian immigrants. That's my grandmother with the lovely little hat. And that's me, the baby with the kittens. And I should have grown up to be a Scandinavian farmer just like everybody else in my family. Somehow I took a wrong turn. I actually came to Maine when I was fresh out of high school. I was following a boy. And like a lot of people in Maine in 1971, I had a copy of Helen and Scott Nearing's Living the Good Life. I was coming here because I wanted to be part of the sustainable food movement, and I had ideas about how we could farm on the land and do things a little differently. That's my friend Patty Hagee, who was my college roommate at College of the Atlantic. Once I learned that I didn't know enough about farming, I was lucky enough to enroll at College of the Atlantic, learn a few things under Elliott Coleman. That was 40 years ago. We didn't have a sustainable agriculture program at the University of Maine. There were few places you could learn about organic farming, and frankly, people thought of it as sort of a hippie, Birkenstock, back to the land thing that was never going to be serious for world agriculture. After College of the Atlantic, I moved back to the island of North Haven, which has been my home for 40 years, and I had 2 acres of vegetables, sold raw milk and eggs right out of the door of our farm, and learned a lot about what it was to actually be a farmer, raise animals, raise children, and be a part of a farming movement. I also learned a lot about value-added farming, which is an increasingly important part of agriculture, by taking the wool from my sheep, turning it into yarn, starting a knitting company, and selling knitting products to stores all over the country, and using the women in my local community who were great knitters and knew something about how to make things and make sure we could make interesting products. Somewhere along the way, I took another misturn and got involved in politics. So 20 years ago, I became the state senator from Knox County. a very unlikely event in my nice little domestic life. I was a Democrat in a Republican district, and I think the fact that I knew so much about food and farming and ran a small business allowed me to have this opportunity to become a state legislator and look at the politics of this. 20 years ago, I sat on the Agriculture Committee, and we were debating genetically modified foods and irradiated foods, bovine growth hormone, but it was a small crowd in the legislature who even wanted to take up that topic, and maybe even a smaller crowd of people who actually thought it was something that we needed to change. I've had the good fortune of going to Washington representing the 1st Congressional District, and once again I get to sit on the Agriculture Committee at a very important time. Every 5 years we reauthorize the Farm Bill, and we're in the midst of that right now. We're in the process of deciding how we will rewrite food and farming policy that will affect us for the next 5 years and truly affect us for next generation. Now, some of you may have noticed, it's not exactly a friendly crowd in Washington right now. This isn't the Agriculture Committee, but you may have seen this panel of 5 men deciding a whole different topic, but it gives you a little bit of sense. It's not an easy time to influence the things that I care most about. I'm lucky enough to be back in the business of farming again. I've taken a 200-year-old farm on North Haven, and for the last 5 years, been working on bringing it back to life. And it's been another great experience for me, understanding, one, how to get my fingers dirty, but also how people are engaging in locally grown food and farming. We grow pigs and chickens, turkeys, we make our own goat cheese, we run a restaurant and serve over 100 meals every night. So I know firsthand that people are really interested in coming to the farm and seeing how things are grown, in buying healthy local food, and eating it on the menu. And the good news is, I also know that this isn't just happening on my little island and my little farm. I would venture to say that many of you in this room buy from a farmer's market, you're part of a CSA, you're deeply committed to buying from a local farmer, and you're part of a trend that is going on all over the country. Maine is a great example of this. The average age of our farmer is going down. More young women are getting into farming. The number of farms under cultivation are growing up. And all of the market trends are around eating more local and healthy food. The hottest trend for the last 5 years in restaurants in this country has been locally sourced, sustainable, and organic food. Where do you go where you don't see on the menu, where the food was grown and who grew it? Farmers markets are expanding everywhere, even in the big farm states. The hottest trend with big corporations is to buy a sustainable or an organic labeled product. Every grocery store you go in today has a section for organic food, locally grown food. Even Walmart, and I hesitate to say it, but Walmart is the largest retailer of food in this country, and they want to become the largest retailer of organic food in this country. That tells you that the market has caught up with all the crazy Birkenstock ideas, and the states like Maine, where we were once outliers, and now we're in the thick of it. So I'm on the Agriculture Committee, and I decided it was time, since we're reauthorizing the Farm Bill, to introduce a new title to the Farm Bill, the Local Foods, Farms, and Jobs Act. We did it right at a small farm here in Cumberland County and got way more people to show up than we ever thought was possible, but once again, a reminder of what we could do. And I won't give you all the details, but we went into all the things that people in Maine had been telling me would really change farming and agriculture, making it easier for young farmers to get into the business, making it possible to support more local food, whether it's enhancing farmers markets, CSA, making it easier for people to use their food stamps, their EBT cards at farmers markets or to join CSAs. Enhancing the number of restaurants that are actually selling locally grown food and improving the distribution network, the slaughterhouses, the infrastructure that we need to do it. Encouraging farm stands, and value-added producer grants, the things that make it possible for a small farmer to turn their goat milk into goat cheese, or to use hoop houses. This one, like one designed by Elliot Coleman, is on tracks, and it actually moves 3 places, so you can have year-round vegetables at much warmer temperatures inside the plastic without a huge energy input. So lots of opportunities, things that we really know needed to be done, an opportunity to actually have tomatoes when people want to buy them, not when everyone has a bushel in their backyard already. A lot of things with school lunch programs to enhance the ability to buy local foods, get our kids more engaged in gardening, and have those experiences that will form their healthy eating habits for the rest of their lives. So we've written the title. We got 70 co-sponsors in the House right away. We have a Senate version of the bill. We have over 200 advocacy organizations that have signed on and said, okay, this is our moment. This is our time. We have to do something about it. And like I said, we're in the thick of reauthorizing the Farm Bill. Now, we just have a few small hitches in the way. You know, some major corporations, a whole system of growing food that's dependent on lettuce in California, tomatoes in Florida, and then shipping them all over the country, wasting a tremendous amount of energy and making it much more difficult for you to procure that local food. But we've got the right argument on our side. About $13 billion is spent today on big commodity farming, the corn, the cotton, the rice, and we're just saying, just give us $200 million, just a pittance of that to encourage what we used to always do in this country and what the market is telling us all we need to do right now. Now, I'm telling you about my approach to this. I'm an elected official. I've got an opportunity here. It's the Farm Bill. But I know that all of you are thinking about, okay, what am I going to do differently? And Bonnie had even flashcards to show us, you can do this, this, and this. So you know even better than me. Are you going to buy more locally? Are you going to join a CSA? Are you going to invest some of your own money to help one of these small farmers to move forward? But I wanted to just tell one quick story, the story of pink slime. Perhaps some of you have noticed that this got a lot of attention in the newspaper just recently, and it's really changed the face of the debate around this particular product. Well, several years ago, if you watched Food Inc., you saw them show the process of making pink slime. You know, it's a water-based process that gets the last little bit of meat off of the bone, and because it's more likely to have pathogens in it, they have to bathe it in ammonium hydroxide to make sure they can actually add it back into your hamburger, and about 85% of the hamburger in this country was actually containing pink slime. Well, then a mother in Texas figured out that McDonald's had taken it off the menu and other fast food chains were getting rid of it. And she said, well, why does the USDA still put it in our kids' lunch? So she did a change.org petition, and before you knew it, it was viral. And in fact, they're going to have to re-outfit the factories that were making it in the Midwest now because people just said, and it wasn't left-wing hippies, it was people saying, wait a minute, I bought a pound of burger. I want burger in there. We introduced a bill to the Congress to say, you can keep producing this, but you ought to put a label on it. People have the right to know, and often that's all you need to do. But I wanted to tell the story of the mother in Texas to remind us all that we've all got it in us to do something about changing the system. Because frankly, who doesn't want to put wonderful, healthy food on their table? You know, sometimes people think this is an elitist, you know, insider issue, but think about Maine. We're 38th in per capita income. We're not a wealthy state, but we love to eat. And farmers markets are flooded today. Restaurants are more and more adding local food to their menu. People want to make this change, and we have it within our power to turn our state back to a place where the fields are full of cows, where the chickens are in everybody's backyard, where young people are engaging again in farming, where we have winter growing of vegetables in greenhouses all over the state, making good use of our sun and our climate. And we have the pastoral scenes that bring our visitors here and make them want to eat at our table. The one last thing I say when people think or say to me, you know, we're never going to get ourselves back. We're never going to be able to do this again. And this is a scene from a farm. This is actually the farm where I now live on North Haven. And as I said, it's almost 200 years old. And when I get discouraged, I go back and look at the census of the island of North Haven. You know, just a tiny little place, but not unlike coastal communities across our state. In 1860, the island of North Haven, 3 miles by 11 miles, had 79 farms in the census. There were 2,000 sheep and 1,000 people. The fact is, this was the breadbasket of New England, of Maine. We produced food throughout our state. We had the infrastructure to slaughter the animals, to process the food. Farms like this grew grains, potatoes, they made dairy products, they sold butter, they produced wool for the woolen mills. I used to talk to the old farmers when I first got there 40 years ago, and they would say to me, you know, if you had your produce at the steamship wharf at 6 p.m., at 6 in the morning, it would be in Boston. You know, we knew how to get it there. We knew how to make sure that every farmer could grow what they needed to and sell it at a market. We don't have to think up rocket science to do this again. We do have to take on some big enemies, but the fact is, all we have to do is replicate the way we always did things here and the way we want to do them again. Wouldn't it make a better community for our children to grow up in? Wouldn't this be better food for our children and our families to eat? And isn't this exactly the kind of society we want to live in and make it possible for everybody to do? Thank you very much.